All right. So there was some confusion 2 or 3 lessons ago about the difference between a project and a repository and a group, and how they all fit together. I didn't have a lot of time to prepare this week, so I'm just going to go over this, and then we have some time for questions. And if not, then we will finish early. So if you're seeing my screen, you see a really big circle with repository. And the repository in Git, and that is really what is most important, is just a folder, a directory on your computer. And in that directory, there's a .git folder. And it means that Git tracks that folder. And it does that by the files that are in that .git folder. And that's it. And whether it's on your computer or on GitLab servers, this is basically how it looks. This is how it works. So you have all your files there, everything you want to track. That is the repository. No more, no less. Now let's start zooming out. So if we zoom out, and we're talking here about GitLab, then the repository is only one part of a project. So a project in GitLab is the repository, but it's also the issues, the wiki, the other features that GitLab has for projects, and a project contains people and their permissions. So if I'm saying that I have a project and I add Zach to the project, that means that he is here in the project and he has a certain permission level. And whether that's developer or master or owner, it doesn't really matter. He has at that moment access to everything in this scope, in this project. Clear so far? Great. So that's a project. And if we zoom out, this is a group. A little bit bigger. A group is first and foremost a collection of projects. So any amount of projects can be filed under a group. And on a very basic level, that is basically what it is. Just a number of projects filed under a group. Besides the projects in which there are also people, we can also add people to a group and give them permissions. So if now I add Zach to this group and I give him the permission developer, that means that for all these projects, he has that permission level. He is a developer for each of these projects. Only if I also add him on this project level with a different permission level, a higher one, that would be overwritten. But otherwise, if I add Zach to this group, he will automatically have access to all these projects with the permission level that I give him here. So I don't need to also individually add him there. What you also have at this level is one of the most notable Enterprise Edition features that we have, and one of the most popular ones. And it is the ability to synchronize LDAP groups. So if I have a group in my LDAP or Active Directory that has, for instance, I have a group called System Administrators. What I can do is I can say, everyone in that LDAP group, give them a certain permission. And in this scope, that means that that LDAP group would have the permission level that I assigned them for all the projects that fall under this group, independent of how I set the permissions on those projects. And again, I could override it on the project level. Besides the people and an optional synchronization with LDAP or Active Directory, there are also certain features that you have on the group level. And this, we're talking here mostly about things that, for instance, you can disable membership management on a group level, several others. Everything clear so far?
Yeah, Chad, can I ask a quick clarification question or an example of that? So would a group, so let's say we have a company like Apple, would the group be example like Apple Watch, and then a project under there could be like apps and something else. So there could be multiple projects that the Apple Watch group is working on, and then Apple Watch can decide through LDAP who gets permissions into which groups.
Yeah, well, let's take Apple as an example. So probably Apple has a group called Apple Watch, and then they would have projects to which everyone in the Apple Watch group would have to have access to. So for instance, one project would be operating system, another one would be calculator app, another one would be Siri for the Apple Watch. So everyone in that group would have access to all those projects, and they could easily integrate them with each other. So it makes sense to put them in a group. Probably their LDAP, they might or they might not have made an Apple Watch group in their Active Directory or their LDAP server. If they have, they would just sync the Apple Watch group from the LDAP with this group, and they would be done. If they haven't, yeah, go ahead, Phil.
You may or may not be able to speak to this, but how does that differ from how it works in like GitHub or Bitbucket?
So I don't want to diverge too much into how they organize it, because they have I don't know about Bitbucket. I know that GitHub has quite a different model. I don't know. I don't know it well enough to speak with complete confidence. But they do it slightly differently. But in the end, I mean, you could get the same result, but it's less transparent than the way that we do it.
That helped. Thank you, Yob.
All right. So essentially, a group contains projects. So we have, for instance, a group called GitLab, and we have a project GitLab CE, GitLab EE, and Omnibus GitLab. We actually have those, but that's easy. But there's more, and this is important for you to know. So let's zoom out. By the way, I'm really excited about doing this like this, about the zooming out.
This is why you should have used a Prezi.
Yeah. Then I would have been working for hours to create this, and now I can just do it in 2 minutes.
Yeah, plus, this way you have it in Markdown, right? So that's good.
No, this is not Markdown. This is just Sketch. I wanted to have something quick. Anyway, without diverging into that. But I considered Prezi. Now we're looking at instance level. So this is the highest level we're going to. So that's why here's a nice gradient on the background. On the GitLab instance, of course, you can have multiple groups. There's no restriction to that. You can create hundreds of thousands, millions of groups if you would like, all containing projects. On this level, you should also realize, of course, that you have the administration. So there's a central admin panel where you can do several things. And that admin panel is above all those groups. It's where you can manage users, do all sorts of things that you want to do as an administrator. And this is also the level where you have several features that you can turn on or off. For instance, you can decide you would only allow certain types of projects, whether they are public, private, or internal. But besides the groups and the features that you all know really well, there's also the personal namespaces. So everyone on the GitLab server can disable this, but everyone can have their own namespace. For instance, on gitlab.com, we allow this, and we allow to have basically infinite number of projects in your personal namespace. And a personal namespace is like a group, but only for you, meaning you can have projects under it. You don't have the features such as LDAP synchronization. You can still add people to a project and have all the other features that you would normally have. So the projects look the same. It's just that it's only under your own namespace and it's not made to work together with other people. You can still do it by adding people to the project, But if you are planning on working together over multiple projects with many people, you can simply move one of your projects to a group. And that's a function GitLab has. You can just say, I want this project. Maybe I started GitLab here. I want to move it to the GitLab group. And you can do that. And it's very simple to do. And everyone has this. So every user on the server is able to do this and is able to create projects under their own namespace. For instance, if you want to have a fork of a repository, which you all know what it is, a good way to do it is under your own namespace. You make changes there, and then when you want to send a pull request, meaning a merge request from your fork, you would do it from your own namespace to the original project. And that's it. Any questions about this? Is it clear now what the distinction is between a repository, a project, a group, etc.?
Yes, for me.
Yes, it is.
Great.
So Yob, I have a question on the namespace and the forking. What are like the top advantages of why someone would do that, but also what are some of the pitfalls that could happen with the namespace and forking out there?
So let's not confuse the things. The namespace is something you have. You can put projects there. They can be your own projects, forks, anything you want. It works just like a group, but just for you. So it's just a place to put projects that are only interesting for you. Forking is a subject I can tell you for hours about, but the gist of it is that forking is really interesting if you do not have any rights to push to a repository. So if, for instance, GitLab, many people want to contribute, but they have to start somewhere and make a change. They are not allowed to push that change to our repository. So what you do instead is you create a fork, you create a clone of the repository, you make your changes there, and then you compare your repository with the original one instead of creating a branch in the original repository, because you're not allowed to do that. That's the main reason to use forks, and then the main advantage you can do that. So it's important that you can.
Okay, that clarifies the namespace for me, so thank you on that one.
By the way, it should be clear, if you fork, you don't have to do it to your own namespace. You can do it to any other group. You just have to have the permission to create projects in that group. A good reason for this would be, for instance, if there's a big open source project and it stops, then you can fork it into a group where you work together with other people on the continuation of that project.
Yeah, do we have documentation or any material that kind of explains this flow of instance and groups and projects out there besides what you just created here?
Yeah, we should have this all documented. And if I am not able and you are not able to find clear documentation on it, we should definitely make sure that it's out there. I was thinking that it might be interesting to make something like this, but actually pretty with less ugly colors, and put that somewhere in the documentation. But we should have documentation on it. Taking a note of it.
So, Yob, it would be really helpful for me if we could create a real example of this. So, for example, I mean, Chad, you use the example of Apple and Apple Watch, whereby we have different groups and we could have different divisions, so that we could paint a real picture in my mind.
Yeah, let's go through it. I'm going to go to my test server and I'm just going to walk through the steps because it's not a lot of work.
Okay. Maybe not using Apple as an example, but maybe a fictitious company that we could make up.
Yeah, actually on my test server I use Apple as an example because I'm an Apple fanboy.
We're using ING. ING or GNI. We'll just call it GNI now.
Okay, let's. So I'm here on my own server, and my username here is root because I'm logged in as a root user. So what I can do when I create a new project is I can create the project by giving it a name. And when I choose the namespace, basically what it's asking me, do I want to put it under group, any specific group, or under my own namespace? So you can actually see here that it's here listed as users, and there it's me. So if I would create a project right now, let's say banking app, then what you would see is that it wouldn't be under a group, but it would be under my personal namespace. There we go. So you see it's under my name, and there you see that it's banking app. And if I would click here, whereas in a normal project you're transported to the group, in this case I would be transported to the page of my user. So that's my personal namespace. That's where I have only my own projects that I can still share with other people and I can use with other people, but I do not have the higher level management of people. So let's create a group. So I can call the group anything I want, of course. Let's call it Big Bang. I can give it a logo and set some deep details. And now that I created this group, probably the first thing I would do in normal circumstances is I would go to members and add anyone else that I think should have access to all the projects that I'm working on. For instance, if I think I have Patricio on this server, yeah. So let's say that Patricio is a developer at my big bank. I can add him as a developer. I add him to the group, as the button says. And even though I have no projects now, from now on, any new project that I create, I know that Patricio will have access to it as a developer. So if I go back to the dashboard of the group, of course, there are no events, there are no projects yet. I can simply click on New Project. And of course, I could also do it through this. And you see that the namespace is now selected as Big Bang. And now I can just create a new project like any other project. For instance, new banking website. And as normal, I can make it private, internal, or public. But if I make it private, the people that I added as members to the group, they will still have access to it. So I have here my new project, new banking website, falls under the group Big Bank. And if I go here to members, what you will see is that there are no project members because I added no one to the project. But if I look in the group members, I see myself and I see Patricio with the developer level permission. Just remember that I added him there. Is there anything I missed, Richard?
No, that's great.
Okay, good.
Sorry. Yeah, that's great.
So quick question, Yob. So on that, I say on the private, so does private, you said private, Patricio can see it. Does private mean that no one will see that group out there at all if they try to search for it? So is it keeping the group private, but people that are in it will always have access to it or see it?
So
when we say
you set the visibility level for a project. And if you have a group which only has private projects, it's not visible.
Okay.
But if you add members to a group, they will have access to other projects that fall under it.
Correct.
So Job, I've got a question. Is you can't see anyone else on this server is because it's your private server?
Yes, that's correct.
Why can't you add me? Okay, cool.
Well, actually, Richard, if I wanted to add you, I could just add your email here. I press enter, and it will send an invite to you to join the server. Because this is how we build GitLab. It should be really easy to add people. So we could just do that. I'm not going to do that because this is my test server, and you don't want spam from me, which Patricio now gets all the time.
So if you're a company with your big bank and you wanted to employing some contractors to do some work, that's how you would add them, possibly?
Yeah, for instance, it depends a bit on what you want, but that's a very easy way of adding people, of course, yes. In this case, I'm adding people to the project, so that makes a lot of sense if you have contractors, if you just want to add them to a project and not give them access to all the other projects in the group.
And then, question. I hear from a lot of clients, they like the fact that, if a member leaves or gets let go or whatever, they can delete their access very easily. So conversely, removing people from this is pretty seamless as well.
Yes, that's correct. You wouldn't do this on this level though. You would go through the administration, which I told you that it's on an instance level, and there you would simply find the user. You go to users, and you can then block the user, and that immediately removes all access to the server from that user. So we could just say, block this user will be blocked, and they are gone. And we can even choose to destroy the user, in which case all their content will also be gone. But if we block a user, we make sure they don't have any access to anything anymore, but we still have access to the things that they created, like their comments.
So that's the typical process when someone leaves the company. They just block them so they can still access all their contributions, and then later destroy once they've, extracted all the data. Okay, thanks.
Well, they don't need to destroy them. Once you block them, we don't count them either to the active users anymore.
So Yob, on the group aspect of it, you talked about LDAP sync and creating those, and I've never seen that. So can you talk a little bit more about when you're on that group, how you would, like, what that would look like, or what the process would be?
Sure. So I'm back at the dashboard. You can see in the URL. Let's go to the group and go to the big bank that we created. So everything that happened in this group, you were present for. So I didn't change anything. Everything is default. Let's go to settings. Here you see some information. We can change the group name and the path where you can find it exactly. And here you see some of the group level features. For instance, I can member lock. I can prevent adding new members to projects within this group. That's something that's very interesting to do if you manage everything with LDAP, which we get to next. I can lock the ability to share a project with another group, which is an enterprise edition feature. By the way, member lock is as well. That allows me to share any particular group project with another group. And I can lock that because maybe you don't want that to be possible. And I can make a group public, even though there might not be any public projects inside. These were the features on a group level that I was telling you about. This is also where I can, for instance, remove the group. So now let's show you the gold, the LDAP group sync.
A quick question. So sure. If you make a project public, everyone can see it, but they can't contribute to it until they're added to the project. Is that right?
Well, that's not completely correct, because you can contribute by commenting in the issues, but they cannot push any branches, any commits to your repository. That is what they are not able to do.
Got it.
They can fork it and create merge requests. So these are the LDAP groups that I was talking about. So we have now fresh in mind how we manage people on a group level and on a project level. What you can do with this LDAP synchronization or LDAP links is you can say, I want a certain group from a certain LDAP server. In this case, I've only set up one, so the choice is one. Let's find a group. So in my LDAP here, I set up a number of groups. In this case, I have a distribution group. And what I can say is that for everyone that is part of this group, I want to give them a certain access level to all the projects belonging to this group. Just like we set the members on a project level just now, we can do the same thing, automated through LDAP. And we can say everyone in the distribution group should be able to read all the repositories, not necessarily write them, but read them. So we call it reported. We can simply say add synchronization. And from this moment forward, anyone from the distribution group, the moment they sign into GitLab, they will see that they have access to the Big Bang group, and they will have read access automatically to all the projects underneath the Big Bang group. But it doesn't stop here, because the real power is that you can link multiple LDAP groups. So I might have 50 groups that I all want to give access to all these projects, but with different access level. I can do that. So I can simply search for another group. I have only 2 groups set up in this LDAP. So in this case, I also have a security group. And the security group are all people that I want to give write access to my repositories. So I'm going to say developer, meaning that anyone from the security group that signs into GitLab will have developer level access to all the projects falling under the Big Bang group. And I can simply edit. So if you're a big organization, you're a big bank, and you have these things predefined in your Active Directory server or in your LDAP server, then you don't want to go through the trouble of adding all these people individually to a project or individually to a group in GitLab. Instead, because you already predefined it, the only thing you have to do at this moment is just say, oh, please link these groups. And from that moment, you don't have to worry about it. Someone new joins the company, they are already put into the right group, because that's what you do in LDAP. And the GitLab is already sorted out. And that's why we added the features also on a group level to lock members for projects, so that we don't want any management anymore of people individually. We just want to do it through LDAP. Are there any questions about this?
So yeah, to your point there, if they're going to do it through LDAP, then that should be member lock checked.
No, it doesn't have to be. Because let's talk about the exact situation that we just have. So I have a distribution group that I all gave read access to all the projects, and I have a security group that I all gave write access as a developer on all projects. But I want there to be certain people that are still able to commit to protected branches. Or maybe I want someone from the distribution group to have write access to one of the repositories. So what I can do, independent of what I did on a group level, is I can go into this project, for instance, for the website, and still add people here as a member and give them a higher access level. So imagining, of course, there's no synchronization right now of LDAP, so you don't see those people appear yet. But let's imagine that Patricio was coming from one of those LDAP groups, and he automatically got a developer level. But for this repository, he will be the lead developer. I will want to make him master. So what I can do is I can simply add him again on a project level. I can say Patricio, master, and I add him. So we see reflected here in the bottom that as a group member, he gets the level developer. But for this specific project, I changed his permission to be a master. So he has more permissions for this specific project and no other of this group. And the member lock prevents you from doing exactly this. It prevents you from doing project level membership management. And the reason for that is that some companies, they want to do everything through LDAP, which is not a bad idea, because you have one central place where everything is organized, and then you just organize the groups in GitLab. You don't have to think about it anymore. But that costs you a little bit of flexibility that in this case we still have by not enabling that feature. Does that make it clear, Chad?
Yeah, thank you.
Hey, Yob, this is Hayden. The two LDAP groups you just synced to that, the big bank group, where would they show up in the project members? Like the screen that we're on now, would they show up as a separate tab?
Yeah, that's correct, Hayden. They would show below here as a separate tab as synced through this and this group. And you would see that they were right here in that group.
Cool. Okay, awesome. Thank you.
So yeah, I'm going down to the bottom level projects. I'm trying to remember. So we talked about mirroring a couple sessions ago, weeks ago, and I think I saw on there some buttons to import from GitHub and so forth. So is it within that project where you would click if you want to mirror a project in GitHub to put it in GitLab? And then so that's one of the questions. And the other one is, so would the repos and anything within that project be mirrored over, even if it's coming from GitHub?
So it's two very different questions. If you create a new project, you have then at that moment the ability to import from any other source. So it can be literally any source because you can just set and give a URL. Or it can be any specific source like GitLab.com or GitHub or Bitbucket. So this is the moment you create a new project, independent of where you put it, whether you put it under your own namespace or under any of the groups that you have access to. That doesn't really matter. So that is in relationship to the importing. When we're talking about mirroring, the mirroring feature, that's something that's also the case right here. So we would give a URL to a specific repository, and then we have the option to say mirror it. This can be any Git URL as long as you have access to it, as long as you give credentials. So whether that it's another GitLab instance, a GitLab, a project that's hosted on GitHub, on GitLab, or anything else, as long as this is a Git project, we can mirror it. I think that answers your question, Jed.
Yeah, it's perfect. And so going to the big bank, if we create the project of whatever big bank website and we want to import from GitHub, we just click on that GitHub and that project would then import over to this new project.
Yeah.
And would it be the repos and everything in there? So I don't know what GitHub looks like. So you talked about our projects being consisting of like repos, issues, wikis, people, and permissions. What of that would import over or what would not import over?
So GitHub has similar features. They also have issues and a wiki and such. Not everything will import over yet. So right now we are importing part of that data, and we are working on importing all of that data. So what we're not importing right now is things like the wiki, and I don't believe we already import all the issues, but we do import the whole repository, of course, all the code and all the comments. We are working on making sure that everything imports. So that means the wiki, the issues, the pull requests. This is something we're working on. This is also something for the future. Our goal is that eventually, if you have a GitHub Enterprise server set up, you can just click and it imports everything and you set it up. Or at least as close to that as is reasonably expected. So whether it's per project or per group, something like that.
Super helpful. Is there any way, so I'm trying to think of when customers are moving from one Git solution to us, is there a way, an easy way or efficient way to copy like maybe the groups they have in GitHub or Bitbucket to groups we have here? Or do they have to always manually do that?
That's a good question. So there's not a one way no, there's not a specific way to do that. We didn't create like a button to do this. I haven't seen this question come up often, though. It does not take a lot of time to create a group and organize them. If this has to happen at a very big scale, we can build it. But what I did hear that many customers do is they leverage our API. So everything you do, you could also do through the API. And in this case, you could do this through the API as well. So although I wouldn't want to put the customer necessarily, on the path of writing a script to do this through the API, it is possible. And they are likely looking into this before even asking us to make this feature to do this automatically.
Okay, so that's how a big bank, if they had multiple groups and projects, that's one way they could migrate over to GitLab through the API. Okay.
Yeah, that would be like, for them, they could immediately do it like that, and it wouldn't have to wait for us to implement anything. All right. Any other questions about anything at all? We're busy at it right now anyway.
Can you show us again how you went to that admin, like how you got to this admin site again? I didn't see where you clicked. I know there were groups and projects.
So you can only see this if you're logged in as an administrator, which is unlikely that you are, because it should only be a select few on the server. But there's simply a really small wrench here in the top right, which is normally next to the plus to start a new project. So if you click there, you get brought to the admin panel where you have all these settings and all these things to do. You can also just go to /admin. So you can try this on gitlab.com and you will get a notice that the page doesn't exist because you don't have access to that.
How would we oh, go ahead, Hedge.
Yeah, I was wondering, could we get some screenshots that we could drop into a doc or something that if we wanted to show clients on a demo, we could just show them what it looked like? Would be really useful. I think Chad was alluding to the same thing.
Yeah, it was just that question. How do we show this to prospects, the admin feature?
So it's something that we should just, and I'm taking note of it, we should just feature it on our feature page. You shouldn't have to ask me for screenshots. If you want to do a live demo, you just have to make sure that you have a server that you have access to the admin panel. And we can set up a server really easily. It takes a minute and it's extremely easy. So either we set up an instance for you.
Sorry, can we set up a sales server?
What?
Or do we have to set up individual servers for each of us, or could we set up a demo server that we could use and play around with and use for demos with clients?
Yeah, you could set up a server specifically to do demos. That's fine.
Great.
Yeah, I think that would help immediately. Yob just having a screenshot of that, like we do for some other stuff. I think like the wiki and activity log. And then to show the LDAP piece, we have access to that, correct? Like if we create our own group, we can then show that functionality.
If we create a demo server for you.
So if we create a demo server, okay.
Yeah, you would have to connect to the test LDAP server that we have set up. So otherwise, you wouldn't even see the feature, because if you don't set up the LDAP integration, which takes some work to do, then we don't even show you the feature. It shouldn't clog up your interface.
Yeah, because I think, and the team can speak up here, I think one of the needs we have is we just need to do a better job as a sales team and as a company of highlighting the permission side of enterprise. And so being able to show more of this administrative piece as showing the LDAP group sync becomes just be very helpful. So whether that's screenshot on the features page or part of maybe I don't want to say PowerPoint, but something else hosted, or a server that we can do this workflow in, that would be helpful.
Yeah, so we can set up a server, demo server that you can use and that everyone just has admin access to. and then we just have to make sure that it's up to date with the latest version. But we should also feature these things clearly on the feature page, so you can always show that.
Anything else, team, that like comes up? Because I mean, this has just been super informative for me, just really looking at understanding LDAP and how to set up groups and projects and so forth. Anything else that you see here that we need to call out better on our features page?
It's been super useful. I think I just need to go over it again and have a look at it, and come back to you on that one, Chad.
All right, if there's nothing else, I propose we leave it at that. I think this will be the last GitLab University for Christmas. So if it weren't for
Christmas Eve? No Christmas Eve?
No, I probably not, Chad. Probably not. I think I already canceled it. But if you really want to do it,
I know you canceled the 17th. I know you
that.
canceled the 17th.
Yeah, I canceled the one of next week because we have a dinner in the afternoon here, and then we were probably gonna drink beer or something. So that's
good for you. This is super informative. So thank you, Yaba. Appreciate the time on this.
Welcome.
Thanks, Yab.
I will send you all a little test again. Last week I didn't get the chance because of time. Something will come. I will update the university page in the coming days as well.
Thank you.
Thanks, mate. Have a good night.
Thanks.
Thanks, Yab.